Hi, everybody. I'm here today to talk to you about phantom hitchhikers, also known as vanishing hitchhikers. It's kind of interesting. I did a video not too long ago about the lady in white, and a lot of hitchhiking stories, phantom hitchhiking stories, kind of overlap the lady in white stories. So that is kind of an interesting little tidbit. But a phantom hitchhiker is generally a woman who is picked up hitchhiking by a man, and occasionally she just appears in the back seat of the car. But generally, she's picked up and she either vanishes from the back seat while they're driving, or she is dropped off, and for whatever reason, the motorist has to go up to the house. Either he lent her his coat and he wants it back, or she left something in the back seat of the car. And so he goes up to the house to be greeted by the grieving family of this person who he gave a ride to, who is actually deceased. So very, very creepy. Now, the history of phantom hitchhikers isn't really known. There's some theories. In the United States. It definitely goes back at least as far as the horse and carriage, and in other places in the world it goes back even further. There's actually a story in the Bible about Apostle Philip, who hitched a ride from an Ethiopian whom he baptized before vanishing. So it's kind of cool that there's a phantom hitchhiker story in the Bible. So in 1981, there was a book published called The Vanishing Hitchhiker. Now, this was a nonfiction book, and it claimed that phantom hitchhiker stories can be traced back as early as the 1800s in different places from all over the world. So this is one thought, that it goes back to the 1800s. Obviously, if there's stories in the Bible, it goes back even further than that. But that was in the book, The Vanishing Hitchhiker. So you might want to pick it up and check it out. They've actually done some research into these theories and into the different stories. And in 1942, two American folklorists collected accounts from 79 different people in the United States that all claimed to have experienced phantom hitchhikers. So this is really interesting. And in their studies, they found that there's actually 4 distinct versions of the story that were common kind of across the board. So in one, it's where the hitchhiker gives an address and is dropped off, and for whatever reason, the motorist goes up to the door and discovers that they had given a ride to somebody that was deceased. In another version, which I find super interesting, an old woman is picked up and she's given a ride, and while they are driving, she tells the driver that there's going to be some kind of natural disaster, or some kind of catastrophe is going to happen. In a lot of the stories, because they were so old, she foretold the end of World War II, giving specific dates, and later found out that this hitchhiker was deceased. So none of the actual disasters that she foretold in any of these stories happened. So I'm not sure. But and none of the dates that she gave for the end of World War II coincided either. So but still, her stories persisted, and she continued to allegedly get rides from beyond the grave. So that's really interesting. And in the third version, the driver meets a girl somewhere, like at a social event, so a bar or something like that, and she asks for a ride home. He gives her a ride home, and this would be kind of one and three combined. So she would leave something in his vehicle, and he would later find out from the people who live in the home where he dropped her off that she was no longer living. So kind of like a hitchhiker, but not, because he meets her. The driver meets the girl somewhere more social. So in the last version, which I think is probably one of my favorites, and one of the more less common versions. The hitchhiker turns out to be some kind of local divinity, so like a deceased nun or priest or something like that, that is popular in the area. They give a ride to this person, and then they describe the person later, and then we find out that it is a very popular nun that recently passed away that ran a local orphanage or something like that. So um, those were the four distinct versions of the story that these people collected, and generally they didn't stray from that, so that's kind of interesting. um the a kind of interesting theory as well is that in the 50s and 60s was when a lot of these stories were happening. So a lot of people in the 50s and 60s experienced these things. So at that time, hitchhiking was very, very common. As well, at that time, drag racing was increasing in popularity, and there was a lot of deaths of young people and a lot of very severe accidents. So, is there a connection between drag racing and um, and all of these phantom hitchhikers of the time, or is it just that so many people were picking up hitchhikers that phantom hitchhiker experiences were more common at that time? I'm not really sure, because a lot of people don't pick up hitchhikers now. Reports of these kinds of things have gone down. So we'll never really know for sure. There are definitely a lot of skeptics. This is referred to as an urban legend and not as like a typical ghost story. So I think generally people think that a lot of these stories aren't true, but I don't know. I would like to hear from you guys if anybody has come across a phantom hitchhiker, if you know somebody that had an experience, and what your thoughts are. Do you think it's real or not real? I want to know. I want to know what everybody thinks of this, okay? So that is it for phantom hitchhikers, but I'll be back on another day with another video about something totally different, okay? Thanks, guys. Bye.